What if the next great Bridgerton love story was never meant to be accepted? What if the heart chose someone the world would never allow? In Season 4, love breaks the rules and passion walks hand in hand with scandal. Because this time a Bridgerton falls, and society may never recover. Benedict Bridgerton had always danced on the edges of London society. He was charming, unpredictable, and known for following his heart more than his head. In Season 4, that very heart leads him down a path that no one, not even his closest siblings, could have predicted. It all began at a quiet art exhibition in the darker corners of Mayfair, far from the grand balls and polished gardens of the Tun. There, Benedict found something, or rather, someone that shook his soul. Her name was Lady Sofia Rosendale. But she wasn't a lady in the way society defined one. She was the illegitimate daughter of a disgraced nobleman and a foreign actress, raised outside of England and educated in music, art, and politics, not embroidery or charm. She was bold, mysterious, and carried herself like she owed nothing to anyone, and yet there was something about Benedict that pulled her closer. Even when she knew better. At first, it was just conversation. A quiet exchange between two curious minds surrounded by brushstrokes and shadows. They debated art, laughed about London traditions, and teased each other with questions no one else would dare ask. Benedict, who always felt like a stranger among the polished expectations of the Bridgerton name, found comfort in her raw honesty. And Sofia, who had spent her life being told she wasn't enough for high society, saw in Benedict a man who looked at her with no judgment, only admiration. But the real trouble began when they met again and again. Fate, or perhaps longing, kept pulling them into each other's world. What started as casual friendship soon turned into stolen moments. A conversation behind rosebush during a garden party, a shared carriage ride in the rain, a quiet night at the opera where eyes did more speaking than mouths. Benedict was falling fast, and Sofia, no matter how fiercely she warned herself not to, was falling too. Back at home, Colin and Eloise began to notice the shift. Benedict's moods were changing. He became distracted, unusually quiet at the dinner table, often sneaking out with no explanation. But it wasn't until Violet Bridgerton found a small charcoal sketch tucked in one of his art books, a woman with fierce eyes and wild curls, that the questions truly began. The Tun, however, didn't need long to start whispering. Lady Whistledown, ever watchful, dropped her first hint of scandal in her latest paper. A certain Bridgerton seems to have discovered a new muse, one whose name appears nowhere on society's guest list. With just that one line, curiosity turned into rumor, and rumor turned into judgment. Sofia's name was suddenly on everyone's lips, though few had ever met her. Some called her a manipulator, others whispered that she was after the Bridgerton fortune. Meanwhile, invitations to parties started to vanish from Benedict's doorstep. Those who once praised his charm now questioned his character. And all the while he didn't care, because the only thing that mattered was her. One night, the scandal reached its peak. Benedict brought Sofia to a formal ball hosted by Lady Danbury. Every eye turned to them as they walked in together, his hand on hers, her chin held high despite the cold stares. The silence was deafening, but Benedict never let go. He introduced her as his dearest guest, and the music continued, but the damage had been done. By the end of the evening, Lady Whistledown had enough material for a full column. What made it worse was not just that Sofia was unsuitable, but that no one knew where she came from. Who were her parents really? What was she hiding? Why? Did she never speak of her past? Even Benedict, for all his love, had questions, but Sofia refused to open that door. "You love me for who I am now," she said once, her voice low. "You wouldn't want to know who I used to be." Still, love isn't always enough to silence the world. And while Benedict and Sofia tried to protect what they had, the storm outside was growing stronger. Society doesn't forget or forgive easily, especially when it comes to love that dares to break its rules. But what no one knew, not even Benedict, was that Sofia's past wasn't just scandalous. It was connected to a long-buried family secret, a truth that would shake not just his world, but the entire Bridgerton family tree, and that was only the beginning. It began with whispers in drawing rooms, soft enough to be missed if you weren't listening, but they grew louder with every passing day. London's high society thrives on gossip, and when the word Bridgerton is involved, nothing stays quiet for long. It wasn't just that Benedict was seeing a woman beneath his rank, it was that he was seen with her, in public, without shame. He didn't try to hide Sofia, he didn't play the game of discretion. That was his greatest sin in the eyes of the ton. The elite families started to circle like hawks. Mothers pulled their daughters away from Benedict at dances. Former admirers turned their backs with practiced coldness. But the worst came from within, the very people he thought would stand by him. Not all, but enough to make him feel the sting. Lady Bridgerton, his mother, was torn. Violet had always supported her children's happiness, but she also knew how fragile reputation could be. She approached Benedict carefully, with a mother's concern hidden behind a firm voice. "You must be wise," she told him. "Not every love story survives the weight of society's eyes." Benedict listened, but said nothing. His silence spoke volumes. Colin, ever the loyal brother, tried to be supportive but warned him privately, "They'll use her against you, Ben, you know they will." Benedict simply replied, "Let them try." But the one most shaken was Eloise. She had always walked the line between rebellion and duty, but even she felt the tension. She met Sofia in secret one afternoon, hoping to understand the woman her brother had fallen for. What she found surprised her. Sofia wasn't arrogant or manipulative. She was tired. Tired of being judged by people who didn't know her. Tired of proving she deserved to stand where others were simply born to. Still, despite the few who tried to understand, the ton was merciless. The rumors turned uglier. "She's hiding something," they said. "No one comes from nowhere." Lady Whistledown sharpened her pen, writing with icy elegance. "One cannot help but wonder what else Mr. Bridgerton is willing to trade for a few stolen kisses and a muse who wears mystery like perfume." Sofia began receiving anonymous letters, some cruel, others filled with threats. Her past, once buried beneath distance and silence, now clawed its way toward the surface. She started pulling away from Benedict. Not because she didn't love him, but because she feared what would happen if the truth came out. She had lied. Not about her feelings, but about who she really was. And the more people looked, the more danger she saw. Benedict noticed the change. In her, he asked what was wrong, begged her to be honest, but she only smiled and said, "You deserve someone easier to love." But love, once ignited, doesn't go out quietly. At Lady Cooper's masquerade ball a night, meant for masks and mystery, everything exploded. Someone slipped a note into Benedict's coat. A single sentence that would shatter the delicate threads holding his world together. "She is not who you think she is." Later that night, a confrontation happened behind velvet curtains. Benedict cornered Sofia, holding the letter in one hand and his heart in the other. "What are they talking about?" he demanded. "Why won't you tell me the truth?" Sofia's eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze. "Because if I do, you may never look at me the same way again." But before she could speak another word, someone interrupted, a man neither of them recognized, dressed in high-ranking military colors, who simply said, "Miss Rosendale's presence here tonight is not permitted. She is wanted in connection with an ongoing investigation." Gasps followed, music stopped. All eyes turned. The man stepped forward, presenting official documents. But instead of running or denying anything, Sofia straightened her back and said, "It's time you knew everything, Benedict." And just like that, the scandal became something more. It wasn't just gossip now, it was a public disaster. Benedict stood in the middle of it all, confused and furious, trying to understand whether he had been betrayed, or whether the woman he loved had been hiding something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The ton rejoiced in the chaos. Lady Whistledown's next column would sell faster than ever, but for the Bridgertons, this wasn't just about social standing anymore. It was about truth, legacy, love, and what happens when secrets rise too fast to control. And Sofia's secret. It would not only affect Benedict, it would pull the entire family into the storm. Because sometimes a scandal isn't born from what you do, but from who you really are. Asterisk, it wasn't just the scandal that shook the Bridgertons, it was what came after. Everyone expected Benedict's romance with Sofia to end the moment she was accused at the masquerade. But what followed wasn't a breakup. It was an unraveling of truth, of history, and of everything the Bridgertons thought they knew about their own family. After the arrest attempt, Sofia disappeared for several days. The Ton assumed she had fled the country, but Benedict searched. He didn't sleep. He didn't care what anyone thought. He needed answers not from Lady Whistledown, not from the gossiping peers, but from Sofia herself. And he finally found her in the most unexpected place, at the old Bridgerton country estate, seated on a bench near the greenhouse. Not hiding, waiting. She looked up at him with tired eyes and said only, "Ask me anything, I will lie no more." What Sofia revealed wasn't just personal, it was explosive. Years ago, before Violet Bridgerton became the noble matriarch she is now, her husband Edmund had traveled frequently, often to oversee family matters and lands connected to trade and diplomacy. On one of those journeys he had a brief relationship. A mistake, a secret, a child. Sofia was that child. Her mother had never spoken of Edmund by name. All Sofia ever knew was that her father was a powerful man who vanished before she was born. She had no claim, no title, no recognition. Her mother raised her alone in a foreign land, teaching her pride, resilience, and survival. After her mother's death, Sofia followed the few clues left behind: a name in a journal, a crest on a ring, a faded letter, and eventually, all signs pointed to one family, the Bridgertons. But what Sofia never expected was to fall in love with the very family she came to investigate. And especially not with the man who might be her own half-brother. Benedict sat frozen. His mind couldn't process the storm of words. You think we're siblings?" he asked, horrified. Sofia shook her head. "No, I found proof after I met you. Documents, letters. Your father never knew about me, but Violet did. She received a letter after his death. She chose to hide it." Suddenly the pieces began falling together. The sketch Violet found, her strange silence, her worried expressions when Benedict mentioned Sofia's name. Violet Bridgerton had known perhaps not everything, but enough. Enough to fear the consequences of a truth that could destroy her husband's memory, her family's honor, and her son's happiness. Back in London, Eloise, always too curious for her own good, had also been digging. She found an old ledger among her father's travel records and visited a retired footman who once traveled with Edmund. That footman, old and guilt-ridden, confirmed the truth. There was a woman. She wasn't from here. He stayed with her longer than he ever told Lady Bridgerton. Eloise confronted Violet. And this time Violet didn't deny it. She cried. The truth had been too painful to face, she said. She had just lost her husband. She couldn't bring herself to acknowledge another woman's child while burying her own dreams. So she locked it away. "I thought it would stay buried," she whispered. "But secrets don't stay quiet forever." Sofia returned to London, not to plead for forgiveness, but to claim her right. She wasn't after the Bridgerton name. She wanted to be seen, to be acknowledged. And if her love with Benedict had to end for that truth to live, she would accept the cost. But the truth was, Benedict had already uncovered the other document, the final piece. A letter from Sofia's mother revealing the real timeline and confirming that she met Edmund months before his marriage to Violet. Sofia was not his child, the relief that crashed through. Benedict was so powerful it nearly knocked him to the floor. But so was the rage. Someone in the Bridgerton family had known the full truth and had stayed silent, letting Benedict and Sofia suffer under false guilt. Whether it was Violet, another sibling, or even someone in the Queen's court, someone had tampered with records to bury this. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about control, about shame, about how powerful families protect themselves by breaking the people closest to them. When Benedict stood before the Ton again, hand in hand with Sofia, they were no longer hiding. They had survived heartbreak, lies, and near ruin. And they stood, stronger than ever, but the damage within the family wasn't over. Trust had been shaken, bonds cracked, And as Lady Whistledown put it in her next paper, in a family where secrets bloom as easily as roses, one must wonder what other truths lie beneath the petals. One scandal had passed, but many more shadows remained. The morning after the truth was known, London felt quieter, but not calmer. The Ton didn't know how to react. Some refused to speak of it, pretending nothing had happened. Others whispered more than ever. But no one could deny that the Bridgerton name, once polished and perfect, now carried a scar. A very public, very emotional scar. And standing in the middle of it were Benedict and Sofia, two hearts that refused to be broken. Even when everything tried to tear them apart, Lady Violet Bridgerton was never seen in the same way again. She remained graceful, of course, always elegant. But the burden she had carried in secret had left a mark. When she entered a room, the silence felt heavier. Some pitied her. Others judged her. But what no one saw was the moment she sat across from Sofia, just the two of them, without titles or expectations. "I made a mistake," Violet said, voice low, hands trembling. "Not because you exist, but because I was afraid of what your truth would do to mine." Sofia didn't cry. She simply nodded and replied, "All I ever wanted was to be known, not accepted, just seen." That single conversation did more too. Begin healing than all the gossip columns ever printed, but outside that room, the world was still watching. Some doors were closed to Benedict forever. Invitations stopped arriving. Old friends became distant. Powerful families whispered behind. Gloved hands warning their daughters not to grow too close to the Bridgerton brothers. But Benedict didn't care. His art grew sharper, his spirit deeper. His scandal became his freedom. He walked into parties with Sofia on his arm, daring the Ton to say something to his face, and surprisingly, some people did speak. Some spoke. With kindness. A few brave souls like Lady Danbury gave Sofia not just support, but respect. "You faced worse than half these noble families ever will," she said once, handing her a fan. "And you didn't break. That makes you more powerful than them all." Meanwhile, Eloise grew more distant from the Ton. Her respect for her mother was shaken, though she tried to hide it. She threw herself into books, politics, and quiet rebellion. She had seen how lies destroy love, and she vowed never to live. That way Colin, too, changed. Watching Benedict fight for something real made him question what he wanted from his own life. No more perfect images, no more silent smiles. If love came for him again, he would hold it tight, no matter what it looked like. But even with healing in motion, not every wound closed easily. The Queen, silent until now, finally made her move. At a royal event, she addressed Benedict directly. "Love that stirs the Ton is not weakness. But remember, Lord Benedict, when you walk ahead of your time, you walk alone." It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder, powerful, cold, and unforgettable, yet not everything ended in sorrow. Benedict and Sofia, now free of false shadows, began their future together with open hearts. There was no grand wedding, not yet, but there was peace. Real peace, the kind that comes from truth, not approval. They moved to the countryside for a time, where Benedict painted and Sofia started teaching young girls how to read, write, and think beyond what society told them. They were building something new outside of the Ton, outside of fear. And in London, the Bridgertons began to rebuild their image, not by denying what had happened, but by embracing it. Daphne, Anthony, and even Gregory took a firm stance. The family supports love, not rules. And slowly, ever so slowly, the whispers faded. Lady Whistledown's final words on the matter were simple but sharp. "It appears not all storms bring ruin. Some wash away old lies and plant the seeds of something bold, something scandalous, yes, but something true." As season 4 closes, the Bridgertons are no longer just symbols of grace and tradition. They are symbols of change, of risk, of choosing love over legacy. But in the shadows of the palace halls and behind the smiles at the next ball, another story begins to bloom. A secret still sleeps, and someone else is about to awaken it, because in Bridgerton, every ending is only the beginning of a new scandal.